Hey everyone, today I'm making the first of what I plan to be mini Albion Online videos. I played the game for a good bit now, and I wanted to make some videos I think would have helped me out when I was first getting into the game. The first of which is obvious. What all can you do? While the sandbox experience of the game is great, I think a video covering all the basics for different activities you can do would have helped me a ton. So in this video we're going to do an overview of all the modes you can do to help get you started with playing the game. Do note this is not a in-depth guide to all the modes, nor will it cover every single little thing, like I won't be getting into the various guild stuff as that will be a different video. However, I will cover various game modes and activities so that you may have some idea of what all you can do to get started with the basic overview of each. Without further ado, let's get into it. Open world versus instance content. The biggest foundation to understand this game is that there are two archetypes of content in this game: open world content and instance content. Open world content is stuff you do in the overworld, meaning out in the territories you see on the map and without hopping into a special instance. Instance content are game modes and activities that you enter into, either through the activities tab or through something you find while out in the open world. This will help distinguish how you enter content. For the open world, let's kind of cover first the different zone types. First, we have the Royal Continent versus the Outlands. The Royal Continent is where you first arrive. This is where the bigger cities are going to be, and where you'll see on the map there are blue, yellow, and red zones. This is a bit of a smaller continent, but there's still lots to do and a really good spot to get started. The Outlands can be gone to through whatever city you're at. In the Royal Continent, there is a portal that you can go through that takes you to the corresponding town in the Outlands. Now in the Outlands, all the zones are black zones. Now, what exactly are the zone differences? In a blue zone, the blue zones are safe zones for non-faction flag players. If you enter a blue zone, you cannot be PvP'd at all. You are safe. You are free to do whatever you wish. In a yellow zone, you can flag for PvP. Now, flagging for PvP means that you can attack other players. If you are not flagged and you come across a player who is flagged, they can still attack you. Now, the thing to know about this is if they attack you first and you are not flagged, you do get a slight buff to kind of help even the playing field, so it doesn't make it as easy to just run around ganking people in this. But either way, yellow zone, it is PvP enabled, though PvP light, as if you are killed, you will be knocked down, but you will not drop all the items in your inventory. Now, red zone also has the PvP flagging system, except it is full loot. So if you are killed by a player or you kill a player, everything drops. Their gear and whatever they have in their inventory drops to the ground and can be looted. And then lastly, black zones are full loot PvP without the flagging system. So everyone is technically flagged. There's no benefits. There's no reputation system. Everyone is flagged out in the black zones, and it is full loot. So what can you do when you go out to these various zone types? The obvious thing that many of you picked up on, I'm sure, is gathering. There's different gathering professions that you can go and get the corresponding tier of nodes that you have levels in, whether that would be, mining or logging or rock smashing or whatever that may be. You can go start gathering. Every kind of zone type has a different kind of gathering theme that you can get. You can see that in the top right of the minimap when you look at a specific zone, but we can cover all of them real fast. So in each zone type, whatever the biome is, there will be a primary resource, a secondary resource, and a tertiary resource. If you go into a forest biome, which are like the ones around Limhurst, the primary resource is wood, secondary hide, tertiary stone. If you go into the highlands, which is the biome in Martlock, then the main resource is stone, second ore, and third is wood. If you go into the mountains like Fort Sterling, primary is ore, secondary is stone, tertiary is fiber. If you go into the steppes like down in Bridgewatch, you have hide, then fiber, then ore, and then the swamps of Thetford is fiber, then wood, and then hide. So each of those types of biomes will have, again, primary, secondary, and tertiary that you can go out, find, and gather depending on whatever gathering skills you are leveling. And of course, you can use this to craft whatever, as everything in this game is crafted. Every item you buy, the stuff you get from dungeons and stuff, they're all crafted by players, so you can go and use this to go crafting. Now you might ask, how does that work actually? Well, there is a system called the Black Market in Carleon, which is a spot in the Royal Continent. You can go there and you can sell things to the Black Market. This is an NPC, in the game that if you sell things to, so it's not to another player, the Black Market will buy it. They have a whole system of sellers. It's very complicated. I'm not going to go into exactly, but just know you sell things to the Black Market, and that is the game, taking those items that you have crafted and putting them into dungeons for players to find and stuff like that. So you can craft things and go there to sell to make money, but be warned, players often roam those lands trying to catch players and take their loot, as you will have to go through lethal zones to get to it. Speaking of the different zones and everything, I do want to cover faction and faction warfare real fast before we start getting into more of the PvE stuff again. When you are in a city, you can kind of choose to sign up for that faction. When you choose to do so, you can faction flag and go off and fight in faction warfare to capture different control points in the territory, that if your faction controls all of them, your faction will take over that zone and control it, which you can get bonus rewards for helping complete in these faction warfare. So this is another thing in the open world that you can do, both in non-lethal zones and in lethal zones. Beyond that, you do have open world bosses and mobs. Of course, you can just run around the open world fighting mobs and bosses. These can result in item drops and a good way just to farm fame. The scale and reward of these does scale with the zone level, and you can get might, another type of XP, by doing this in black zones. This type of farming mobs is further enhanced with the next two activities you can do. The first being static dungeons or open world dungeons, are group dungeons you can enter that have a map that is always open to enter and leave. You can roam around these killing mobs, fighting bosses, and looting chests. There will be an open world quote-unquote dungeon on the outside that you can fight elite mobs at, and then you can go through to the door to enter the actual static dungeon itself. These are designed for groups of 3 to 5 players, though some players equip gear of a higher tier gear to be able to solo these on their own. The other type of activity I mentioned before are the raid dungeons. So open world dungeons that are on the overworld, so you don't even have to enter anything necessarily like you do with the static dungeons. These dungeons are also called the world bosses. They are designed for groups of 10 players and are pretty tough. At a fixed time, the raid boss spawns and you fight your way to face them. There are 3 raid bosses on the Royal Continent: a T5 Elite Bone Crusher Earth Mother boss in Innis Mon, a T6 Elite Condemned Harvester boss in Camland, a T7 Demon Prince boss in Astolot. In the Outlands, there are 8 raid dungeons. These are all tier 8 bosses. You have a Prince of Morgana in the Daemonium Keep, an Elite Condemned Harvester in Deathreach Priory, an Elite Condemned Harvester in Unhallowed Cloister, a Prince of Morgana in the Citadel of Ash, a Great Mother of the Earthkeeper in the Eye of the Forest, a Great Mother of the Earthkeeper in Elder Sleep, an Elite Condemned Harvester in Black Monastery, and then lastly, a Prince of Morgana in the Wailing Bulwark. And those are the things that you can do in the open world. Now let's hop into instance content. The first that I'm sure if you've been running around the map you've seen a lot of are the solo dungeons. These are randomized dungeons meant for 1 to 2 players. They contain treasure and enemies. As you push through, you can fight mobs, side bosses, and then eventually a final boss to complete the dungeon. These challenges and rewards match the tier of the zone they are found in. They can be found in the open world, or you can get a map by crafting or buying one at the store to spawn them in the open world for you to go to. Similar to solo dungeons, you also have group dungeons. Again, these are basically the same thing as solo dungeons, except they are scaled for groups of 3 to 5 players. They can also be found in the open world or spawned in the open world with a map. Next on the focus of PvE dungeons, we have Avalonian Dungeons. Now, this video is for beginners, so this probably isn't something you'll do anytime soon. However, I did still want to share it so you know what they are. These are in-game PvE dungeons that require discipline, coordination, and a prepared group. They are scaled for players between T6 to T8.3, with between 10 to 20 players needed to do them. These are large dungeons that take approximately 1 to 3 hours to complete, that if you complete, you will get a 10% fame bonus for a week. Again, these are intense PvE dungeons that you won't necessarily do starting out, but this is something that you can strive to get to and complete if it is of interest to you. Moving past the pure PvE content, we have corrupted dungeons. These are single player dungeons that are a mixture of PvE and PvP. You venture in with the goal to kill the demonic mobs and side bosses to rack up points, or infamy in this case. When you hit 100 points, the final boss spawns and you defeat him to get the final chest of this dungeon floor. From there, you can continue into the next corrupted dungeon or exit the dungeon. However, there is a twist with this. When you enter a dungeon, you'll see a demonic shrine in front of you. If you activate this, you have the chance to invade another player's corrupted dungeon. When an invasion happens, the invader is tasked with finding the other player and killing them. The one being invaded has a choice of killing the invader to kick them out, or going around the corrupted dungeon map destroying demonic shards. Destroy enough and it will kick the invader out. Now, if you do not activate the shrine, you still have a chance of being invaded. However, if you do activate it, you can invade someone else while also having a higher chance of being invaded. End of the day, you go in on your own and kill mobs to clear the dungeon with a chance of some 1v1 PvP action. These can be found in yellow, red, and black zones. There's 3 tiers with them. Non-lethal or hunter with a soft IP cap of 900, so if players are wearing too high gear that puts them past the item power of 900, it gets soft cap so it doesn't scale too much. You then have Lethal Stalker with a soft IP cap of 1000, so if you kill the other player, you get their gear. And then Lethal Slayer with a soft IP cap of 1300. So you can do corrupted dungeons non-lethal to learn as you get started. Similar to corrupted dungeons, we have Hellgates. They are basically corrupted dungeons. Instead, though, of being a 1v1, you enter one of 3 types of Hellgates, a 2v2, 5v5, or a 10v10. Otherwise, the system is very similar, if not a near replica, of the corrupted dungeons with a slightly different map scheme to be found. The Roads of Avalon, a very intimidating and potentially confusing, full lethal type of content. The Roads of Avalon are next to speak about. They can be entered through any Avalonian portal. From there, you enter an instance location that will have other types of Avalonian portals in there. The same portal you entered will lead you back to the open world wherever you first went in. Or there will be other portals inside that either take you to other Roads of Avalon instances or another spot across the open world. These are zones that can be a part of the Atlantis or the Royal Continent. In the actual Road of Avalon zone, there's usually a road structure that you can ride along. There won't be mobs on the structure, and there will be speed boosts along it if you're on your mount that can help travel around quickly. Beyond the road structure is the wilderness, which will include forest path, gathering resource sites, Avalonian camps where you can fight elite Avalonian mobs for specific loot drops and chests, and randomized dungeon entrances. When you enter a Road of Avalon, there will be a tier of the zone. This will determine the mob difficulty and the possible nodes you can find in that zone. Lastly, when you approach a portal to enter a road while within it, you'll see symbols on the ground that will let you know information about that road you are about to enter. So not the one you are in, but the one that portal would take you to. Most zones are 7 players through the portal, so after 7 players use it, you will see it run out of charges and takes a few minutes to start building those back up so more players can enter it. This leads to a lot of roads being used for smaller to medium-sized groups who wish to do content but not worry much about the large zergs that can be found in the open world. However, the symbols on the ground will dictate if it is another group size, that being either 2 or 20. The circle will also let you know the tier resource that the zone will have if you just count the dots on the strange symbols that are lines with dots on the end. So overall, these are good zones to do with a small group to travel around the map and potentially skip a lot of zones as you do them. You go and gather resources in, or you can farm mobs for fame and might and Avalonian specific loot, or you can look to gank people in these. Lastly, we have the Mist, the newest form of large content added to the game The mists are accessed via the will-o-wisp that can be found in yellow, red, and black zones. Moving near a wisp will activate it, which will spawn a portal for you to enter. There are two types of mists, solo and duo, with the vast majority being solo size. Solo mists, if you join in a yellow zone, will be non-lethal, but if you join one in a red or black zone, it will be lethal. Duo mists are always lethal. The wisps also have rarities being either common, uncommon, rare, epic, or legendary. Depending on the rarity of the wisp, the more difficult the enemies become, but the more rewards you will get and the higher tier the resources will be available within the mist. The mists are a great way to do solo content and not worry about being ganked by large groups. However, the mists can be used to level, but do be aware that there is not an IP cap on them, so you will come across a lot of high-spec players. All forms of resource gathering can be found in the mists, and there will be different activities in the mists that you can do, such as side quests that will get you fame bonuses and chest unlocks. There are also turbulent wisps which can be interacted with to do a small little escort mission, crystal spiders which are little mini bosses that can drop goodies, random chest spawns that appear, and locked wisps that you can free, and then of course the Nightfall Abbey, which is a dungeon within the mist that you can enter the farm for a mist-related temporary buff or chest with loot. Overall, the mists are incredibly expansive and incredibly popular, as they're relatively safe to do to the fact that players are limited in being a solo in the solo mist or at most a duo in the duo mist. If you're concerned about being ganked, hop in the mist to do your gathering and learn the PvP a bit with the non-lethals as you farm fame. And then lastly, of instance content, you have the arenas, which are well, as you would guess, an arena is a pure PvP mode that you can hop in, typically in a 5v5 faction within unranked or ranked system. There's also some other more complex versions of the arenas, but just know you hop in and usually fighting over control points or what have you, and then arena mode, that's just pure PvP. And these are the core types of content that you can do in Albion Online. Again, this is not a fully comprehensive list, as I did leave out all the guild activities, which is quite expansive and complex. And of course, you can go around PvPing and ganking people and what other form of content you might have created for yourself. The intent of this video was just to do an overview of your options for beginner players, so you understand what exactly you are seeing and can understand where to go to get started with content you might be interested in. I'll be continuing to publish some more Albion Online videos, so if you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe and all that goodie. We'll see how this video does, and if I'm feeling good about it, then I might just continue them. Either way, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out.